Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Mjolnir at the Movies. This week we're looking at Eyes Wide Shut, which is Neil's choice. Not that I'm blaming him.
Nope.
No, no, but
Oh,
I'm going to start off with my main criticism of Kubrick, I think, and I'm going to let Neil answer this. And also, James will probably chip on all this as well. You see, the thing about Kubrick is I see him as a great cinematographer, but a very average director who gets lucky. And the reason I say that is because one of his biggest faults, and it certainly shows with this film, is that he has absolutely no sense of pace. So, what do you think to that criticism?
well, what would you regard as being a film that would have good pace and that you could compare to with something Kubrick would have done?
That's very difficult to say, but
Okay.
it's like this. I've tried to sit through Barry fucking Lyndon, and I can never get through that film, no matter how hard I try, and I've tried several times. I just can't do it. I fall to sleep after Leonard Rossiter dies every time. But it's got
Yeah.
some wonderful scenes, you know, as individual scenes. If you watch them on YouTube or something like that, it's great. It's beautifully done. They're like works of art. They're pictures. But that's the thing. They're pictures. There's no action. There's no sense of dynamism. Because
You need somebody else to work with them to really hit the movie magic moments.
yeah, because you've got to have a mixture of both. You know, you've got to have those quiet moments, like in Blade Runner, for example, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. You've got both. You've got the dynamism, but you've also got those quiet, reflective moments, and that's what makes it such a good film. But can you say that
See,
really about
I,
Kubrick?
I'm not really a Barry Lyndon fan, if I'm honest with you. I've only seen it once or twice.
Everybody's only seen it once at most.
I've never seen Lolita. I've never seen, is it Wings of Glory or
Lolita is
Past? Yeah,
extremely average. Lolita's
I've never seen it. I just don't have any desire to see it.
yeah, and it's like this as well. I think he gets lucky with his actors.
Mm.
You might say that okay, he doesn't get lucky because he selects them, but still, without those actors, those films would be extremely average. So
Like,
in
you've got to
full,
wonder who else is helping them with the casting, because that's something I could imagine you would get other staff helping you with and agents.
yeah, yeah, that's right. So for example, with Full Metal Jacket, that film would be nothing without Ali Ermey, who was a real life drill sergeant before he played that role. So he's playing more or
Mm.
less an exaggeration of what he actually did as a job. Um, Other films like Doctor Strangelove, Peter Sellers makes that film.
Mm.
That film would be nothing without the talents of Peter Sellers. So
But I think
he does get lucky. And the same with Malcolm McDowell in A Clockwork Orange. And basically, again, all he's doing is he's reprising the role he did in Lindsay Anderson's If.
You're talking about getting lucky with the casting. I don't think he got particularly lucky with the casting in this at all. I think there's a lot of really just rotten performances.
Yeah,
Really awful. I mean,
that's
and it was highlighted by the length and the way the film was paced. If it was an electrifying performance, I could probably watch it for an hour and not realise the time was passing. But so many of the performances were just off the mark, just off key, or they were just terrible. It really felt like it dragged on and there were unnecessary scenes.
yeah. Cruise and Kidman are the most unconvincing couple there's ever been,
Yeah,
which
I mean, it's
might
like
say
watching.
something about Cruise's sexuality.
I was just gonna say it was like watching a gay man with straight women.
and also
And
you,
Nicole Kidman cannot act drunk or high. How ridiculous was her performances when she was trying to be drunk on champagne or high with the weed? It was rubbish.
Yeah,
You
you're
couldn't
right.
convince it was high school level acting. It was terrible. That was the point where I just realised how terrible she was. Because the scene with the champagne, I thought, is the joke there or the theme there? She's meant to be pretending she's drunk, but no, she's really meant to be drunk. She's just that shit an actress.
Well,
Same with the weed part.
I wouldn't say she's a shit actress because she's good in other things where she
Well, in
plays.
this she was.
Yeah, that's right. And but
Uh,
that suggests that the director cannot get the right stuff out of his actors.
Although I know what he was wanting out of her arse, because that's what you saw on screen way too often for this film.
Yeah, I'll be honest. You know, when I first watched it, I thought, "Ooh, Nicole Kidman naked," but after about the first hour of seeing Nicole Kidman naked, I went, "Yeah, Nicole Kidman naked again." Okay. I got bored of it.
Yeah, every excuse to have her bum there, it was there, and you realise that there's actually no reason. It's not. Even in there's loads of moments it's there. It's not a sexually charged moment. There's no thematic reason for it there. It's just an excuse because the director wanted Nicole Kidman's bum on screen.
Yeah.
And let's look at who her father was. I think the folks at home listening should Google him and find out what he got up to. Oh yeah, he's very well known in Australia.
A bit of research for people at home.
Do tell, Neil.
No, I think it'd be more fun if you guys went to check for yourself. But basically, he was involved with a very notorious paedophile child trafficking ring.
Oh.
Oh.
Now that's very relevant for the film. We'll come on to that.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's just a little footnote out there. I hope I'm right about this and Nicole doesn't sue me.
Nicole, please note that he's not worth a lawyer. He really isn't.
Yeah.
He's not worth a lawyer's bus ticket.
This is just a discussion about a movie.
Please note,
nothing more.
Yeah, please note that we don't collect donations, so we have no cash.
At all.
Yeah.
You'll actually have to send us money so we've got the bus fare for the court case.
We'll be defending ourselves because we haven't got the money for a lawyer.
And we'll probably put her in prison anyway.
Yeah. So what do you think, Neil, about this pacing business?
Well, I'm a Kubrick fan. I always have been. I don't like all of his movies. I haven't seen all of his movies. But I can always tell when you watch a Stanley Kubrick movie, you know that every single scene has been meticulously planned by the guy. And even if the pacing is a certain way, or even if the acting is a certain way, or there's a specific actor in a certain role delivering a certain line, there's always a reason behind every single word that they're saying. He doesn't put any scenes in there that are throwaway. And the scenes that you think are throwaway have got a lot of hidden meanings behind them. So there is a reason for the pacing of those movies as well. He's doing that because he doesn't want to take you on a regular storytelling journey where you start at the bottom, you reach your climax, and you come down again towards the end with a little bit of hope or despair at the end of it. He likes to mess with you. So his pacing's off. It's for a reason. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah, but his pacing's off in so many films, that's the only problem. 2001 as well is a terribly slow film. All his films are terribly slow if you look at it.
Well, 2001's, yeah, 2001's just like a big giant Vangelis video or something like that. But it has gone. I mean, if you watch it, it can be personal to you. It doesn't have a story per se. It just has a series of events that you could turn into a story for yourself. And Kubrick lets a lot of the imagery do the talking, opposed to like long verses or long bits of dialogue. He can do it artistically as well.
Is this maybe not though a case of he's got a tremendous talent, but a sort of one weakness that he really needs somebody else to help him with?
Yeah.
Which there's no shame in. There's no shame in. He's obviously still got genius in areas, but he really should have somebody else, I think, assist him.
No, but
with his weaknesses.
Yeah, but this is why I say, he's a great cinematographer, but not a great director. And he started out as a cinematographer as well. I think that's where he should have stayed. That was his forte.
In this particular film, though, I mean, how much it was to blame on him and how much was to blame on the post-production after he died. Because, of course, he died, before the final cut, didn't he?
Well, there's something interesting about that. And it's a little bit of controversy about this, but apparently when the film was shown, it was longer by a further 20 minutes.
Ouch!
Now, there was a showing, and apparently Stanley walked out with the producer, and they had a big argument in the hallway, and people were listening in on this, and they demanded that they cut out 20 minutes, but it wasn't for the length or because it was boring. They said that they couldn't make it into a cinema release film unless they cut 20 minutes out. Now, the argument is that that 20 minutes was just elongated sex scenes and violence and more nudity. But you think about it, that's 20 minutes. That's a long time to be showing sex scenes. It can't just be that. So there's a theory out there that there's some missing footage from that movie that made scenes longer and gave it more of a story, but they cut it out because they were terrified that people were going to think this is a literal depiction of what elites do in their spare time.
Well, I could imagine
that's a conspiracy theory anyway.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people debunking that, including his own widow.
Oh.
Yeah, but
I think though, even just from an artistic point of view, I could imagine if you're setting up a lot of clever, meaningful things in the background, and then maybe you've cut 20 minutes out, you could totally ruin a clever plot by cutting out the wrong 20 minutes if he's dead and can't say no, that bit's got to stay for it to make sense. I mean, can you imagine if Usual Suspects, they cut out the wrong 20 minutes in that one? You could imagine quite a few minutes you could cut out, just have people walk out and go, what was all that about?
Yeah, and there is some suggestion to say that it is a lot of nonsense, and it's actually is just elongated sex scenes. But for me, Kubrick, every scene that he filmed could have been important, maybe not to a critic of the film who's looking at it saying, no, you don't need this scene, and it cut it out, or I'm not putting that movie out there into the cinemas. These guys aren't making the films. They don't know what the story is. The director does. So I can understand why he got so angry about the scenes being cut, and apparently he died of a heart attack 2 days later. So there is the argument, or was it 2 days, 2 weeks? But it was pretty soon after. I'm
Obviously
thinking,
the Illuminati.
Yeah, well, it could have been the Illuminati, or you could have just died of a heart attack from the stress and arguing of it all, and maybe it was just too much for him and he had a heart attack. But regardless, people seem to think now that there is this sinister plot that he was revealing something about the Illuminati and that he died because they killed him, because he was releasing this information out there to the masses. I'm not sure if that's so true, but that's what the film is about.
Or is he just filming and showing what he likes because he's a dirty bastard himself?
Yeah. Or it could be like one of these disinformations where he was told to make it to make the whole thing look ridiculous.
I'm going with that one that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Because
that's what I think.
Because he pins it on the Freemasons, if you look at it. Because the chair that the Red Cloak sits in, that has the Freemasons logo on it. Has the double-headed eagle with the ball and crown, and that's for a 33rd level Freemason, if I remember rightly. So
right.
He's pinning it on the Freemasons, but this is not Freemason stuff, as we're probably going to look at.
Yeah. But you're right. Well, that's what I think. I think because there's lots of symbols and there's lots of stars and weird pentagram type shapes scattered around, and there's lots of weird colors that you would suggest, yeah, that's a sort of Masonic thing I'm seeing there. But this is what I'm talking about. He put that out there deliberately to focus our attention on the Illuminati, Freemasons, rich white people in their castles. But it was a deliberate distraction.
Do you think it was that, or do you think it was just cheaply plundering what was already around? In the kind of cultural zeitgeist, the background, and he's just plundered that for an easy references and things that would trigger in people's minds, certain emotions and sort of ominous natures. Same as organ music, they always put in creepy films.
Well, the thing is, I'm not really into like the Stanley Kubrick conspiracy theories about the space landings and all that. I think they're nonsense. But what I do know about Stanley is that he enjoyed those conspiracy theories about him. He puts references in his film alluding to these conspiracy theories, which further fuels the conspiracy theory, like Danny's shirt in The Shining with the Apollo rocket on it. That was him deliberately putting that out there. You guys think I shot the moon landings. I'm just going to pretend that I did and fuel this. Now, what he's doing here is, in my belief, I think he was in with these guys, these elitists that do these horrible things in secluded castles. I think he's involved with that type of people. And he's deliberately making this film. He made this film to distract from him and all his friends and who they are. And one of his best friends, is Steven Spielberg.
Are we going to mention the JQ here? I think we're going to have to, because...
Well, we have to, because people might know what we're talking about. What the hell are these guys talking about?
And especially as I'm going to have to bring in the source material for this, because some things are kept very much the same, and some things are changed. And the things that are changed for a reason, which I'm going to go into. But would you like to start off with the JQ involving Stanley Kubrick? So he is Jewish, of course. So we'll start with that.
He's Jewish, yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of things in his film that stand out, whether or not they're conspiracy theory. But in 2001, we have the name HAL, the HAL 9000 computer. And if you take HAL and you move them forward, it becomes IBM. And somebody told me that's what they apparently used in Auschwitz to keep track of the Jews that they were gassing. Now, if that's true, then Stanley Kubrick must have been referencing that in some way. So he obviously had some side. And there's a couple of scenes where IBM will show up on the visor, on the guy's wrist computer. So we know he's Jewish, and we know he's got a grudge.
Hang on, what's this IBM in Auschwitz then?
I read somewhere, this could be true, I'm not sure, but
they
I read
the machines that would keep track of a lot of the logistics and the inmates and things. They got a bit of stick for that in more modern times.
Yeah.
Right.
They made a lot of the... Because back then it'd be mechanical machines,
Yeah, I'm going to say it would have been mechanical, but I mean, that's, of course, if you believe in all that Auschwitz nonsense.
Well, the thing is, Stanley Kubrick absolutely was cashing in on that.
Yeah,
or making a stance.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. He was absolutely referencing that, either to stir controversy, subliminal.
Yeah. Surely not.
Why would they do that?
I can't imagine anybody doing that.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, the Jews, of course, they reference the Holocaust in films all the time, even in passing and so on. How often does that 6 million figure come up in television shows?
See, in Star Wars is
6 million times.
Yep, 6 million forms of communication that C-3PO speaks. He says it in both The Empire Strikes Back and The Return of the Jedi. Watch for that, folks.
Mm-hmm.
And something as simple as the $6 Million Man, the TV series. Why $6 million?
Yeah, it's everywhere, and he actually was doing this in a lot of his movies. A lot of his movies have got these little references.
Yeah, that's
like
right.
the typewriter in The Shining is apparently the same color as the pajamas they wore at Auschwitz, the blue and cream sort of color. And people might think that's just coincidence, but he's a sort of person who would do that deliberately.
And as you said, he's very obsessive about the detail. That is his forte, the scene. He doesn't accidentally put in colours in a scene because that's his thing.
So Stanley Kubrick's Jewish, and he makes propaganda films, basically.
Yeah, very much so. In fact, he references the Holocaust quite a lot through his films. And the reason he never did a specific Holocaust film was because basically he referenced it so often throughout his films, and so there was no need to make a specific Holocaust film.
Yeah.
And we'll get on to Arthur Schnitzler, though. This film is based on Arthur Schnitzler's Traum novella. It's translated into English as Dream Story, because apparently people must think that people in English don't know what a novella is. It's very strange, but anyway. But the plot is pretty similar. What is different is you have this orgy, just as you do in the film, but there are little differences. For example, in the novella, they are dressed in priestly robes, and the women are dressed in nuns' costumes before they throw them off and they're naked underneath. So there's very much an attack on Christianity. In fact, in one of the scenes in Traumanovella, the female lead, what's she called in the film now? Nicole Kidman's part, I can't remember what she's called now. She's
Kate.
Oh, is it Kate? She's Albertina in Traumanovella. And she describes this scene in which Fridolfin, who's Tom Cruise's character...
Alice.
Oh, Alice,
sorry.
Right. Okay, Alice. Okay, so it begins with A, just as it begins with A in the novella. What's Tom Cruise's character again in the film? I can't remember.
Bill Harford.
Memorable film then.
Bill Harford. Okay, well, he's Fridolfin in the novella, but there's a scene in which she describes her dream to him, in which he's crucified. So you get a lot of anti-Christian imagery, as of course you would expect from this tribe. We, of course, are also anti-Christian, but from a different perspective because we're pagans. And we see the Christianity as basically international Semitism anyway. But that's a by the by.
Yep.
What Schnitzler's doing is he's deconstructing the European culture of the time. And also you find out in the woman who dies, who's in the morgue, in the novella, it's a baroness. So
right.
there is this idea that they're all aristocrats in the novella. So
it's a bit of a change then to make her a prostitute.
Yeah. So he, instead of talking about Freemasons and Illuminati and that kind of thing, here the target is the aristocracy and the religious dimension to European life of the time. So this was written in the 1920s in Vienna, so not really Weimar, but just as bad. You know, it's ultimately very, very closely linked to Germany, of course, is Austria, or Austro-Hungary. Well, is post-Austro-Hungary. He was born into the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Interestingly as well, Kubrick is descended from Austro-Hungarian Jews. The other interesting thing about Schnitzler is that he was friends with Theodor Herzl, who was the founder of the Zionist movement.
Coincidence.
Yeah, just coincidences. Just coincidences, of course, folks.
These little coincidences keep cropping up, don't they?
It's amazing.
Yeah, nothing to see here. Move along, move along.
That's it. A few more of these coincidences and I'll be picking out lottery numbers.
Another thing that what I want to touch on is the paedophilia aspect. Because
the daughter of the...
Yeah, but in Traunovella, it's even more foregrounded.
Oh, God. I thought it was pretty vile enough, this film.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary as well to the story. That's one thing. I thought it was completely unnecessary.
Oh, I hope I change your mind about that later on.
The whole pedo subplot, it just felt really uncomfortable. It was horrible to see, and I thought, why is this here? It has nothing to do with it.
Well, in Traunovella, when she, as I say, Alice, or in the novella, Albertina,
right.
when she talks about the infatuation with this Danish guy while they're on holiday, he then turns round and talks about that same holiday, but there's this young 15-year-old girl who he's infatuated with.
And he does that a lot.
And also, and also that prostitute that he comes across, that's also in the novella. She's 17 years old, is specifically said. And then also the girl in the costume shop, she's specifically said to be 15 years old again. So you've got that very borderline paedophilic aspect. It's more or less said that Fridolfin is very much into that.
So the book's a lot worse, and it was made in a much more socially conservative time.
Well, not really, because don't forget that this is the period of the Weimar Republic in Germany and a very similar sort of milieu in Vienna.
I see.
And this is, of course, when Hitler comes to power and when he takes over Austria as well after the Anschluss. One of the books that he burnt was indeed Traumnovelle, and he described it as Jewish filth. Now, you know, I have my differences with Hitler, but he's bang right on that one.
Yeah, all Kubrick's films are like that. All of Kubrick's films, well, the ones I've seen anyway, in some way reference rape, sex, or some kind of deviant act, and he covers it up and dresses it up with all these symbolism aspects, the colors, and specific lines, and he has a lot of hidden backstories. But deep down, all his movies are just really disgusting. Full Metal Jacket was about rape. The Shining was about Jack raping his son. This film is about rich elites engaging in sexual acts and maybe human sacrifice and mansions around Europe. I mean, his films are riddled with it.
Yeah, Lolita, don't forget, he filmed as well.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, so I don't really want to see it just because it's called Lolita for a start. I just got no desire to see it.
There's something you don't want in your browser search history.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
how do you buy that at a VHS store? Sorry, at a VHS store. I haven't seen this for a while. A DVD store.
Where are they? We are a bit behind the times in Scotland, probably. We'll just take the horse and cart to the VHS store.
Well, I mean, Lolita is one of his earlier works, so he didn't get to be as explicit, and you know, it was 1962 when he did that, so he was constrained by that period of time. Certainly, the remake that has what's he called now? Oh, I've forgotten his name. The actor.
Yeah, he does a lot of B movies. I know the one you mean.
Yeah, long hair.
No.
The guy that's in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, he was in. It was in Kingdom of Heaven.
Orlando Bloom.
No. Oh dear. No, he was in Playaway when I was a kid. He was in Playaway when I was a kid. Oh shit! I can't remember his name now.
He was also he was in the adaptation of Terry Pratchett's novels as well for TV.
Oh yeah. Oh shit! Why can't I remember his name? Jeremy Irons. That's him.
Oh, him.
That's him.
Yeah.
The guy in the mission from the mission.
Well, the remake with Jeremy Irons in is far worse because that was in 1990s, about 1995ish, I think it was, and that is far more explicit. They have a very young actress playing the role of Lolita.
I remember it was a bit of scandal even with that getting made at the time.
Yeah, and it is extremely near the knuckle.
Stuff. Yeah.
It's not comfortable watching that.
That's not going to be on anybody's top 10 movies of all time list on Facebook.
No.
No, you don't want that on the shelf when your girlfriend is over.
Whereas Kubrick was forced into using an older actress to play Lolita when he did it, so he sidestepped something there, but it was really due to the constraints of society at that time. I think that it would have made a film more like the 1990s film anyway, but probably at a slower pace.
Oh no.
But yeah, I think that the paedophilia aspect is, even in the film, coming back to Eyes Wide Shut, it is there and it is in your face, especially with that young girl in the costume shop.
Going on an even worse scene.
They're all horribly precocious and very forward. It's really uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
If you guys watched the
But it's
last,
two Asian guys.
Well, the actress who played her, Lili Sobieski, was 15 at the time of filming.
So they're really hammering it home, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're not.
She's Jewish as well.
They could have got an older even actress that just looked younger, but they've even made it extra creepy.
Yeah. Interestingly as well, in Traunovella, speaking of Jewish people, Nachtigall, which is a literal translation to nightingale in the film, it's his friend, of course, the pianist, who introduces him to all this. He is specifically Jewish in the novella.
That's right. There's a Hungarian guy as well.
The actor in the film for the pianist, I thought he was a bit rubbish as well, but though, as you pointed out with Nicole, it could be down to the director, because he kept chuckling bizarrely. It was another one that his behaviour didn't seem to match the scene, which I think that it's kind of showing the director wasn't on the ball at all with this. If Nicole Kidman was fluffing it, and so was the actor that played the pianist. I don't know if you noticed that, these odd chuckling moments, and I kind of wound it back before it, and I watched it again. I thought his character and the performance is just off. It wasn't implying anything or suggesting anything, even knowing the whole plot. It was just off.
Do you remember the receptionist as well in the hotel? And he's acting a little bit strange as well, and all smirky.
Yeah.
Well, there is a reason for all this. Then I'll allow you to continue,
Kubrick.
but there is a reason for this.
Go on.
Kubrick's rubbish.
Go on, Neil.
I've been dying to say this. I've been dying to say this. Every scene that Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are in, from as soon as they go to the party, that is a setup. Tom Cruise's character knows Ziegler. He's his personal doctor. Ziegler is one of the leaders of this sex cult. Now he's taking Tom Cruise in, and Nicole Kidman's character says to him, "Why do we get invited to this every year?" They're both seduced. Nicole Kidman is seduced by the Hungarian man. Tom Cruise is seduced by the two young girls. It's all a sort of welcoming act to see how far they can push them and test them to join their cult. So every person that interacts with them in some way is manipulating them towards going there, towards Tom Cruise's character going to this mansion. The film plays out when you watch it for the first time. You think he snuck in there by some information by his friend, the pianist. Then you start thinking about it. He's all been set up. He's been inducted into this. This is like a sorority challenge for someone joining the campus. Then you start seeing why everybody's acting strange and smiling and smirking. And they all seem to be lying or telling a story that's not quite true.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but is that a charitable fan sort of interpretation? I was actually worried you were going to tell me it was a dream, because if he told me it was a dream, that was going to be too much.
No, because if you look into some of the scenes, there's confirmation here. There is. Do you remember the scene where Tom Cruise hands a newspaper clipping to Ziegler, and he says, "Have you seen this?" And they read it. The camera kind of pans on top of the newspaper clipping that he has, and it says that the girl who died, whose body Tom Cruise went to see in the morgue, she was the girlfriend of a guy called Leon Vitali. Now, Leon Vitali is not a character in the movie. Leon Vitali is a second assistant of Stanley Kubrick, who actually played Red Cloak. Now, think about that. So there is... but then again, on the flip side of that, the Hungarian guy at the start that seduces Nicole, there's a lot of speculation that he is Red Cloak because it's the same voice actor. So they're all connected in some way. Every single character in there is connected. They're in on this cult. The two girls, they're at the orgy about halfway through the movie. Everyone there, they're just conditioning these people messing with their minds.
What about the
to
costume
induct
shop
it.
guy?
Well, the thing is, do you remember the scene where he's in the bar with Nightingale and he says, "Where am I going to get a costume at this time of night?" The next thing, it cuts to him driving to a costume shop called the Rainbow Fashion Shop.
Yeah.
Now, the two girls, what did they say to him at the party? Tom Cruise's character. One whispered in his ear, don't you want to taste the rainbow? Now, it's all connected, so the shop assistant's in on it. And the girl that's there, it's all a setup to test whether or not he's going to dob them into the place or talk. They run him through all these conditioning tests. Will he open his mouth? When the hooker at the start who takes the what do you call it, the coke ball, and she almost dies. He says, "You're not going to tell anybody about this, are you?" Speedball, and that's it.
Yeah.
He says, "You're not going to tell anybody about this, are you?" So he's testing his honor and his ability to keep his mouth shut, which is why everything bad starts happening after he does start talking about it and making inquiries.
Seeing step by step what he'll put up with tolerances wise, and whether how much they can trust him with small secrets, and then ever worse.
And even the hotel receptionist, he is there. If you not noticed how strange and almost sexually he acts towards him, he's like licking his lips and all kind of eyeing him up. Now he's obviously a part of this crew as well, and he's been put there. You don't know he's a hotel receptionist. He's just some guy, and he's clearly lying. He's saying, "Yeah, these two big guys came along, and now that you mention it, he did have a bruise under his eye, and oh yeah, he handed me a note saying help." You're like, you're lying. And Nick Nightingale, he's even in on it as well, because he says, "Oh, I haven't seen you for 10 years. What has it been, 10 years?" And you go, "Oh, by the way, have I ever told you I play piano for this creepy sex cult in the middle of nowhere? Here's the password." What does Tom Cruise do? And the only reason that Tom Cruise's character in the film messes up is because he takes a taxi cab there. And that's why Ziegler goes, remember the scene with the red pool table, the red monolith shape? When Ziegler's saying, I trusted you. But he obviously blew his cover and maybe compromised the whole situation by pulling up in a taxi cab. He said, everybody else turned up in limos, you turned up in a taxi cab.
Because the taxi driver can't be trusted. That's it.
Yeah. So that's another problem they have to deal with. So it was all a conditioning to see how far in they could adopt him.
What about the girl that sort of agrees to take his punishment and then she's dead? What was that part about then, you think?
Well, she's the hooker who almost OD'd on the speedball.
If she was a hooker, because we only have
if she was,
word. We only have his word for it.
Exactly, but it does say in the newspaper clip in that she was the girlfriend of Liam Vitale, who, the person who's called Liam Vitale in real life played Red Cloak. But it's suggesting that he was the girlfriend of him, if that's who Red Cloak really is.
But why would she have to die?
Because she knew too much.
And she wasn't in it.
Well, do you remember the line near the start where Tom Cruise's character is speaking to her and he says, "You can't keep doing this"? What do you mean you can't keep doing this? He doesn't say never do this again. He says you can't keep doing this. So obviously he knows that she's done it before.
Yeah.
But that's supposed to be the same character.
Yeah, that's a big difference between the novella and the film, because Ziegler doesn't even exist in the novella. And
well, there is some suggestion that said that he's Red Cloak because he's got the red pool table. And you remember in the sort of start of the orgy scene, there's a big sort of square red carpet, and he taps his staff onto the ground twice. Every so often he does a double bang on the red carpet. If you watch the chat with Ziegler towards the end of the movie, he does the same thing with the cue ball and the chalk. So he taps it twice, and he picks up the chalk and he taps it twice again. And people think, is this a reference? Red table, or an unusual red table? See, it's full of hidden imagery, and when you watch it a second time, you'll see it, and you'll notice 9 times out of 10 when a door is opened, behind it there's either a red light or a blue light. Every single door that gets opened is a red light or a blue light. or a window is blue or red outside.
So what's the blue for then?
Well, I think personally it was maybe Stanley maybe indoctrinating us into thinking it's like a Freemason color, blue and red, but I'm not sure. It could be something like that. It could be some kind of rainbow reference. It could mean blue is for good, red is for bad. I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But most doors you see in the background are blue and red. So I'm not sure what he's trying to say about that, but there's so much hidden imagery in it. And right at the end, the very end scene, I think is the most disturbing. And this might sound like clutching at straws here, but there's something really profound about that scene. They're in a toy shop, and everywhere there's teddy bears. Now, teddy bears prop up a lot in Stanley Kubrick movies.
That's true, yeah.
Like in a lot of Stanley Kubricks, there's a teddy bear somewhere, and if you pick up like the teddy bear in Full Metal Jacket, and the soldier leans down, picks up, and gets blown up, and the teddy bears in Shining. Now, if you look in the background, just before the start of 3.5 minute monologue or whatever it is by Nicole Kidman, their daughter walks off in the background, and they smile as she walks off. In front of her are two men in long black coats, and those two men are the same two men that were sitting at the very first party at Ziegler's house in the background. It's the same people. They turn away, they don't watch her again, and for 3.5 minutes, Nicole Kidman's character talks. Now, there's suggestion to say that was deliberately put in there by Kubrick, with the teddy bears, the young child walking off with the men in the long coats, and Tom Cruise's character, Nicole, continuing their conversation about their marriage.
And Nicole's conclusion is just to have sex at that point, isn't it? Where the kids wandered off.
But if you watch it, it really is quite as... maybe when you watch it the first time you would notice it. It took me a long time to really notice it. And I looked up, and Rob Eggers spoken about it, apparently. Not that he's entirely trustworthy, but it's still a very interesting scene, because if I hadn't told any of you guys that, it might just come across as a really boring scene. But when you watch it again, you're going to notice those two guys that the kid appears to run off with. And the teddy bear reference is undeniable.
Although the question there is, how did they think this was going to work in a cinema format? Because nobody's going to pick this up surely in a viewing.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I don't know, but people are talking about it now.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, imagine you paid your money to see this in the cinema. You'll come out kind of like Dave and I going, what the fuck was that about? That was too long.
Right, probably, yeah.
You see what I mean? You know, I wouldn't watch that the first time like this is a masterpiece. I'd say it looked fantastic in a lot of scenes. I mean, credit where it's due, but it was bizarre and confusing and uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like a watchmaker making this really fancy mechanism and everything, but yet doesn't put the face or hands on. So you can't tell the time. So you've got this thing.
Watch this twice.
Yeah, so you've got this thing of beauty and everything, and you can appreciate that it's really well made and so on, but still, you've got no face value, if you see what I mean. It doesn't do its job. And the problem
there is, you wouldn't even know to go back and watch it again, because the first time you watch it, you've had your first impression, you'll think, what a load of rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, story-wise, it was a load of rubbish in the first watch.
That's right, yeah.
And the other issue is, although it's interesting here, the sort of pieces put together, there might be something there. I'm always suspicious as how much of a kind of shotgun, scattergun approach. You know, you could litter a film with pseudo breadcrumbs and just hope that the fans piece something together. You know, if you were a bit more cynical, you could do that, couldn't you? Add in a lot of spooky things, odd references, and just wait for people to essentially create a plot for you.
Yeah, I'll tell you what you could equally do. You could put a load of random shit in, and then just leave it to the critics and the fans, and will sort of be spurgy enough to try and find meaning out of it.
Like a lot of that modern art where you've got the one cream-coloured square, and people read deep meaning into this whole gallery full of them.
Yeah, that's right, because the people who try to find meaning in everything. It's like with all this new numerology stuff. One number, of course, that comes up is 237 in the film. as
That's right,
one of the shops, which is a reference to The Shining. But is he just referencing that film just to get people to go, "Ooh, yeah, 237. I've seen that on the door of the terrible room in The Shining. What does it all mean?" And so going
Of course,
off
Spielberg
yeah,
references his old stuff as well, and it's not meant as any kind of deep meaning to the plot. It's just a nod, like was it
Yeah.
THX 1138?
137 or something.
137, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember, but you know what I mean. He references these things in his own works, but I don't think it's a deep part of the plot
I just think that
or to connect the universes. I don't think it's meant to connect them.
I just think Kubrick is one of these guys where, I mean, his films are very hard to watch because they're so riddled full of just different random things that you could literally connect any story and create any story. As a result, you could literally just think of thousands of conspiracy theories that would work with it.
Well,
But
I think yours is actually a
enjoy-
better plot than his. I'll give you the credit there, Neil. Neil, you came up with a better film than the one I watched. But if only you were there to tell Kubrick, maybe you should kind of,
If only.
actually hint that this is the real plot rather than just leave us all baffled at the end. After 2.5 hours, no less. 2.5 hours, and we still don't know the plot.
well, I think what he's referencing a lot is a meta-narrative, actually, that covers a lot of his films, and that is paedophilia.
Yeah.
And that is that people like Kubrick are very much involved, as we, as a sort of crept out of Hollywood recently, with various scandals, and people like Corey Feldman coming out and saying that it goes on, and Elijah Wood also coming out and saying that it goes on, and that there are these elites in Hollywood who do indeed groom young child stars and rape them. I personally think that Tom Cruise was one of those who was abused, and that's how he's got this career. And if you look at his body, one of the things about his body in that film, doesn't it look so boyish?
Is that because he's so used to being depicted as being a sort of muscly guy that when you see him when he's not, it's a bit strange? Because he's always this action hero, isn't he?
Yeah, but here you've got his naked torso an awful lot, and doesn't it look really boyish somehow? Is it me or what? Or is it just because I'm a big hairy bastard? Is it?
Well, I suppose it back then he was still kind of modelling the kind of pretty boy image for the ladies, wasn't he? He had that kind of, he'd be in the teen mags and stuff as the face. Because that's now what, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So that would have been his forte back then for marketing.
Yeah. But as I say, going back to the main point, I think that what Kubrick is referencing in a lot of these films is this meta-narrative. He's pushing it under your nose.
Absolutely. And even in the scene where it's kind of towards the end where Nicole Kidman's character, Alice, she confesses what her dream was about. And you notice what he does? He kind of goes in like a fetal position.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of really creepy. But his films are full of it. They're absolutely riddled full of it. And I honestly think that he's probably one of them types who are doing this. And he made these films either to poke and make fun at people, and saying this is what we get up to, but we're never going to show it. But Kubrick
could it be
satirizes.
like getting people used to the idea subliminally?
I think so.
Well,
sort
maybe
of
if it works, it works, right?
Yeah, sort of dripping it in a very acceptable way. A very sort of boxed off, detached way, because obviously the cinema, it's not real, so they can just sort of drip the idea in.
Yeah, that's it. They do it first through novels, because you can get away with a lot more in literature than you can on film. And then they put it on film, and then they push the boundaries of film, and suddenly it's in your face.
You'll have some campaigner on telly talking about the problems of the pedosexuals or something.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the differences, as I've just mentioned, between the Lolita of 1962, Kubrick's Lolita, and the Lolita of the 1990s. And
I saw some
you will
clips.
see
The making of that is horrendous. It's
yeah.
they barely hold back at all. It's disgusting. And I don't know how Jeremy Irons, he was gloating about it, just kind of smiling on, think this was fantastic. But it's like, well, I suppose he's getting paid, and he knows it's not real, but it's still horrible stuff. And he seemed to be quite happy about it.
That's right. I mean, you get the actress is probably about 13 or 14 or something.
She looked really young.
Yeah. And
the only scene I saw was the one with the rocking chair, and that was incredibly creepy. And he looked creepy as well. It was disgusting.
Well, she dives out of the bed naked at some point in that film. Of course, it's a body stocking, so she's not really naked, but you're given the impression that she's naked.
I remember the Irons was, and I think one of the crew were there sitting there, and they were discussing it. Oh, it's okay because our mum's on set for most or all the scenes. And I thought it's not really all right. I mean,
No,
that
it's
doesn't
not all right at
excuse
all.
everything. No, it doesn't just excuse it because our mum's there. It's
ask,
still horrible either way.
I would ask questions about the mother, to be quite honest.
Mm.
What kind of a mother would allow that?
One that wants money.
Well, yeah, exactly. But that sort of shows the level of these people, where they'll do anything for money, and they'll sort of prostitute their children, if you like, for money.
Getting very close to it in that one, in a literal sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
It felt like that.
I mean, the Michael Jackson scandals is coming back at the moment in the media. But how many parents let their children go and sleep at Michael Jackson's house? Why would you do that? You see, my parents wouldn't do it for any money whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. Same here.
Yeah.
And so, what kind
It's
of...
such an obvious thing too.
Yeah. What kind of people are we dealing with here?
And it's so deviant from the norm as well. I mean, it's a question you just know what the answer would be if you asked 99% of people. If you walk down a street, and you could ask that question, you know what the answers would be overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
No way in hell.
That's right. And so, as much as we talk about the Jewish question, and particularly in this film about the Jewish question, we've also got to ask the Gentile question, in that why do so many of our people sell out and do incredibly horrible things for shekels?
They've obviously been decided that what matters more is just money, short-term pleasure than their own blood even.
Yeah. And this is the main problem. And of course, money has been a replacement for the idea of blood. And this is why racial nationalism is important, because the idea of blood comes first. And so people go on about how superficial skin color is and so on, as though race can be reduced to skin color. But how much more superficial is the color of money?
That's it. Money and whatever cheap tat you're buying with it that you're going to throw away in a few years to buy the next bit of cheap tat.
Yeah.
And it'll all rot after we're gone as well, because it's just plastic and bits and bobs.
That's right.
But, your family stays on, ideally, hopefully forever.
Yeah, that's right. Your lineage lives on after you. And that's something that's priceless. So, as much as I can criticize Kubrick, I would criticize the people who know what they're doing and still get involved in this kind of stuff more.
Yeah, you can blame the buyers and the sellers, sort of thing.
Yeah, you can, especially when they know the price of what's on offer and so on. It's it's a horrible. I just feel sorry for the children, really, because they're innocent, and they're the ones really that we should be protecting.
And a healthy society would.
It would, yeah. It would, absolutely. So, really, I suppose, I know that you like Kubrick and everything, Neil, but
Well, I don't. I would say I would want to have dinner with him, but
no.
but I appreciate his movies. But it's one of these things where I'll be honest, though, I don't really watch a whole hell of a lot of movies these days because 9 times out of 10 there's some really sinister, creepy person involved with the making of that film, and Kubrick's absolutely one of them.
Yeah.
Or was, should I say? He absolutely was one of them.
Mm. Well, yes, you can still disagree with a lot of the person while being honest about some of their abilities and their talents.
No,
But it taints his movies, though.
Yeah, emotionally, you're watching that, that's the back of your head. Same with an actor, an actor's particularly loathsome. It's hard to watch his performances, even if he's good.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we've looked at The Shining before, you and I, Neil, and I regard that as a really great film. But I would never pay money to watch it because I wouldn't want that money going to him.
No,
so I'd
or a Polanski movie.
Exactly. I'd watch it for free. Yeah. And I'd watch it to analyze to see what's going on and so on. I'd look at it critically.
But you wouldn't support it
No.
Yeah, the whole industry sort of thing.
Yeah, you've got to allow the industry to collapse.
Absolutely.
So Joel Schumacher's another one. People don't watch Joel Schumacher movies.
Oh yeah.
I really don't like that guy. I think I mentioned him on like every podcast at some point.
No, but you're right to.
Yeah. People need to be warned.
So yeah.
Ironic that he makes a film called Lost Boys, but
yeah, we should perhaps do that as a look at vampire films in general, perhaps on one podcast.
We could do because you could do like Carpenters and so on as well.
Yeah.
Kind of set them. Quite interesting.
Yeah, it would actually. Yeah.
Look out for that in an upcoming podcast, people. You have to subscribe to let you know when it's happening.
Yes, subscribe, you buggers, subscribe.
There was one aspect of it, just getting back to the film, the doctor. I was wondering what you thought of where they're all, he's seemingly wedded bliss, and he has one sort of tiff over weed with the badly acted wife in that argument, and then he just decides to go whoring. It's a bit bizarre because it didn't feel real at all, and he ends up sleeping with the prostitute, which possibly has HIV, etc. It's a kind of bizarre shift in this in his behaviour. And equally bizarre was the widow. No, not the widow. Sorry, the bereaved the daughter of the man that died. And in the room, she's trying it on with a man who says he doesn't even know her. It all seems so weird. It didn't make any sense.
That with the widow actually goes on in the novella, you know.
I was wrong. It wasn't a widow. It was the daughter of the.
Daughter,
so it's the father.
Yeah, that's right.
I said that wrong at first. Yeah.
No, but
so they've got the dead father lying next to her, and she's trying it on with a doctor who himself says we've never had a conversation other than about your father, and she's off to get married with this. As you find out, quite a handsome professor, so good money and good looks. And you went, what's going on here?
Well, did you not notice what she was saying though? She was basically confessing that she might have had something to do with the guy dying, because her story is clearly made up. She's clearly lying about the way he died, and he knows it. And maybe that's another part of the initiation test, seeing if this guy's going to open his mouth. And if you consider every character like that who acts suspiciously is testing him, because it's so obvious. I mean, she's lying, and you can put it down to bad acting, maybe. Maybe it's terrible acting, but I think it's good acting that shows bad acting. Right. I think about it that way, because she's clearly saying, oh, well, I might have had something to do with this.
See, I think what happened was Nicole Kidman's ruined the film for me. Everything after that I just assumed was bad acting. The pianist, her, the bereaved daughter, I just assumed it was all bad acting after that point.
Well, actually, it was bad directing, really, that got bad acting out of Nicole Kidman. Because what he did was he had them do the same scene, take after take after take after take, until they were exhausted, and then he chose that take when they were completely knackered.
Yeah, he was a sadist like that. He would slap people.
Yeah,
to get a specific reaction out of them.
In fact, the original lead was Harvey Keitel, and he left because Kubrick had him doing take after take after take of the same scene. They went basically "fuck you," and walked out.
And he's of course a veteran of these things.
Yeah, and he just thought that Kubrick was taking the piss. That's Kubrick's fault, really.
Yeah.
Why they look so exhausted? Because if you look, they look really tired.
Yeah.
In that scene where she's smoking the joint.
That probably explains why it was so bad, because they were exhausted.
Yeah,
Are they
exactly.
not supposed to be tired, though?
Yeah, I think that what he wanted to try to get was that they were tired of each other, basically. That was the idea of it. That they were... Familiarity breeds contempt, I think, was the underlying message there. And so, because he comes up with, I know you better than you, basically. And she says, you don't. You don't know nothing. And comes up with this thing about the Danish guy who she wanted to fuck and everything.
Which Kubrick, of course, has to show in detail.
And
completely unnecessary. He had to show that as a dream for the Doctor.
Well, I think what he was trying to say is that Tom Cruise's character was actually enjoying the little dream, which is why he kept having it.
I thought it was meant to be haunting him.
I think he was trying to say that the Doctor was enjoying it and he was getting prepped emotionally for the parties. And there is speculation to suggest that Nicole Kidman is in on it too.
Well, he seems throughout the film as though he's a voyeur, because if you notice, he never participates in anything. Yeah,
he doesn't even have sex with that prostitute.
No.
So it could be that he enjoys the thought of his wife being in that kind of fantasy, and when he goes along to this big orgy, he doesn't jump in and get involved. He just watches. So it says something about the character. You wouldn't think of something like that all the time if you really didn't like it.
And there are slights against his masculinity all the way through the film. Notably when that gang push him off the side of the edge there, off the pavement edge. And
bit of a weird moment again.
Call him a faggot and so on. The scene in the book is where two students walk past him and they mutter something and start laughing, but he doesn't quite hear what it is, and he thinks that he should have had a duel with them. But this is ramped up a gear in the film.
It sounds like the book was better written.
No, it's horrible.
Is it? Because that scene, it didn't make any sense, because the problem was the Doctor was dressed very sort of conservatively and plain, but the only reason they were going to pick him because of his outfit and appearance. But it didn't make any sense, because he just looked like a kind of normal youngish man dressed, quite plainly, really, apart from being very smart, but it was quite plain.
What about if those this might sound a bit far-fetched here, but what if those guys were also in on it?
Because this is getting like gang stalking now.
Well, the thing is, when you get to the scene where he meets, remember Ziegler says that he has him followed towards the end of the film. He has him followed everywhere. The hooker he meets at the traffic lights just descends on him from nowhere.
Neil.
Well, the problem...
I know it's crazy.
This is like coping. This is coping. It's a coping mechanism.
Neil,
this is it. Yes.
What if I'm in on it?
You could well be.
The main problem with all of this, like everybody's in it thing is, one, apart from the, okay, you can argue about the practicality of them just them standing there, presumably for 8 hours waiting for him to come by, whole gang of them, and then they come into the act. But also, what was it actually all to cover up? A bunch of people having sex in a mansion? No, nobody's going to spend that much money to cover that up, because if somebody told you right now, oh, there's a bunch of rich guys having sex with women in a mansion somewhere, you're not going to immediately go, fuck, call the cops, helicopters, gunships, we'll send a lot. What is there actually to cover up?
Well, I see what you're saying, but there is a scene towards the end when Ziegler says to Tom Cruise's character, if I told you the names of the people that were there that night, you would not sleep comfortably. Yeah, that was one of the lines. So
was that
maybe
just a cheap, spooky reference? I mean, you hear that kind of thing in films all the time, in books. You're like, oh, the people I know. Yeah, exactly. You get folk will fit you that online as well.
And Ziegler does say something slightly before then, saying it's all make believe to scare the crap out of you. So he kind of gives them like two kind of sides to it. He says, but at the same time, if the people that were there, if I told you their names, you wouldn't sleep comfortably at night time.
It looked more like bored aristocrats or bored rich people just having some, basically, what do you call it, swing parties with dress up. Rich people swing parties. Yeah,
but like I said, I honestly think it was just one of these things that the guy made to distract attention from him.
It would have been more interesting if they had went maybe even more creepily, if they kind of hinted that it was actually like a pedo ring. And then you could see why you'd cover it up, because folk would lynch them. Mm-hmm. Well, if they're just having sex with models and hookers, somebody slept with a prostitute, and even the police are just going to shrug and say we've got better things to do.
That's right. Yeah,
it would have been too in your face, so then wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. The problem is the whole film's got to work on its plot, and the plot is you've got this very elaborate costume ball and it moves about and it covers up sleeping with prostitutes that are all adult women. Normal people don't care if the rich people are off having a swing party. They just don't care. So you wouldn't need to move it about. People just say, oh, it's these dirty buggers up the road.
But I think the reason they used adults and older people is because they couldn't get models or actors that young to do things like that.
They did with the costume shop's daughter. They came very close to the...
but I think that's about as far as they'd be allowed to go.
Yeah, so they could have hinted like that. They didn't need to show anything, but if they could have very obviously had... If a young lass is running like that with her underwear in a place like that, you'd immediately went, that's what's going on. If they had had it that scene, you'd have went, that's what's going on. But instead, they isolated it in the costume shop with the two Asian guys, so it just looked like a dirty... old man, father pimping his daughter out. Instead of it wrapping up with a conspiracy, if they'd had that girl even in the background somewhere of the scenes, even like her just like standing next to the fire, even fully dressed, you'd immediately alarm bells would have gone off thinking, why is a young girl that young in a room with all these perverts? And sex acts going on in the mansion. Alarm bells would have gone off and you could have filled in the story yourself. But instead you saw very obviously adult women and adult men, and you think, well, what's actually particularly interesting here?
But James, don't you think that young girl in the costume shop is a sort of a cipher for what's really going on?
You mean that's actually the viewers to sort of connect up rather than...
Yeah, because you can't really put that into the orgy scene. Bearing in mind they're all fucking and everything, you get quite graphic...
You could just have a walk through a corridor or something. You wouldn't need the actress anywhere near that. You could just have a scene where she walks through the corridor, he glances at her, and you would immediately think, she's a bit young, what's going on here? Yeah, and you'd assume it's going on in another room.
But you'd have to have her topless again, wouldn't you?
Well, you'd only have to have her in her underwear, or even just the fact she's in the mansion, even fully dressed. If she's in a mansion that the viewer knows there's bizarre sex parties going on, you would connect the dots immediately and think, why is she wandering a building where all these things are going on? I mean, I would certainly, if I saw, some bizarre swing party going, one, I wouldn't really care if it's all adults doing whatever, but if I saw a wee lass like that, I'd immediately think something funny's going on. I'd be calling the police if I saw that.
Yeah.
That's what I think that you could have made it more obvious to the viewer. Especially, remember, we're talking about a one-time deal in a cinema, ideally.
But the thing is that he doesn't really want to make it that obvious to the viewer. He wants to put it under their noses, but not too much, because he doesn't want a reaction where people go, "Whoa, hang on a minute, Hollywood's full of paedophiles."
Yeah, so this is actually I keep forgetting. Yeah, this is either mocking or to drip feed in the idea while I'm trying to fix it and make it a film about a story.
Yeah,
Actually, get the story through in one viewing so people understand what's implied. Yeah,
yeah. What it's doing
it's
is
not broken from his point of view, but it's broken from how I saw it.
what it is
Yeah.
is it's trying to lower our defenses to the new morality, and so
And they used a couple of scenes, like in the costume shop with a young girl in the trailer.
Oh,
Now, I was too young to see it in the cinema, but I'm pretty sure if that trailer was on now and I seen that, I wouldn't be like, yeah, this film looks pretty disgusting. I'm not sure if I'm going to see this. So you have to question the sort of people who would initially go and see the movie.
you'd assume that's what the film's about because it's in the trailer.
Yeah.
Especially
And-
back then, 1999. Not a lot of internet users
Yeah.
back then.
and as I say, bear in mind that the book is worse than the film.
Which
Worse in
obviously
what way?
they've all
Worse
read.
as in really bad, or like worse as in revoltingly worse?
Dirty.
Revoltingly worse.
All right.
Yeah.
And
They've obviously all read it and enjoyed it.
The opening scene actually is interesting in a bad way, because what you have is that 6-year-old girl, the daughter of the couple, reading a book where you've got 24 Negro slaves rowing a boat. So immediately is getting the idea of the Negro in there as well as. And that's of course not been included in the film, because she's reading aloud as well.
You notice in the film, now I could be wrong here, but in all the important scenes, and I'm sure all the scenes at both parties, I did not remember seeing one black person.
No, there were 2 Japanese people though. And
Yeah,
that's,
two
that-
Japanese people.
And that's interesting because in the book they're actually French.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, but there's no black people at the orgy.
No, that's true.
There's no black people at the party. I don't think there's any black people in any of the scenes. Maybe in the cafe in the background.
Or is that part of the game where they're trying to do the evil rich white
Yeah.
people Mason sort of thing though?
Yeah.
There it is.
Because these people are all meant to be despicable.
But are
So diversity maybe doesn't go in when you're trying to make a despicable group.
But are they white or are they white? With echoes. Because I've got this feeling that the males are Jewish. And the
Ziegler's definitely Jewish,
yeah,
isn't he?
that's right.
Yeah.
And the females are white.
I had that feeling as well. Actually, I thought this is like some kind of fantasy
Yeah. Well, and
for them.
And this is what the book is all about. It's about Freudian wish fulfillment. Arthur Schnitzler and Freud had ideas that were pretty much identical, but independent, because Jews have a sort of a groupthink. And Freud actually recognized this. One of the reasons he was reluctant to meet him was that he thought that it would be like looking in the mirror. But Schnitzler was the literary part and Freud was the theoretician, if you like. But they were both on a parallel trajectory, both seeing the same things and both pushing the same ideology, the new cult of psychoanalysis that's infected the West, and this idea that everything is reduced to sexuality.
Which probably ties in with the completely unromantic relationship that the couple had on screen.
Yeah.
You know, even at the end with the kid in the toy store, she talks about that, you know, they want to fuck. You know, it's not even make
kid
love
shop,
or have or cuddle or anything romantic. It's just completely like sort of sexual mechanical stuff coming out.
Yeah.
And in a toy shop, you know, which you know is full of kids. So, and even the kind of close moments, there was nothing. They were always interrupted or ruined. There was nothing wholesome in it.
Well, there again, I mean, you've got the connection between fucking and children.
And they're not like they're a dirty couple, aren't they? I mean, they're pretty grotesque parents, the way they act. Like they do all these things throughout the movies. They got all these weird fantasies. They go off into the night seeking thrills. They get high that one night, and they argue. And she's trying to double question them, make them feel bad. They're not good, wholesome parents.
No,
But you notice Tom Cruise's character, he does a thing often in the movie where he flashes a lot of money. He spends a lot of money paying people off. I'll give you like $200 over this. It seems that he's been made out to be this rich white guy who's just morally corrupt. His wife's morally corrupt, but he's flashed with this cash. And these evil rich white people are living in this mansion doing all these horrible sex orgies. While all you like small people are suffering. And that's what Kubrick was trying to do. It was absolutely deliberate.
But underlying propaganda.
And one little snippet to throw in there. When they go to the party and Tom Cruise is, the two girls approach him, you notice one girl's called Noella. And if you look at the credits, she's called Noella Windsor. Now, could that be a connection to the Windsor family to further implement that idea? Because that's a royal name.
Well, the name wouldn't be an accident. Somebody knew what they were writing, I suppose.
Yeah. But he's definitely trying to push something to distract attention from something else.
Yep.
Or is he? Because wouldn't that be such a bluff to make us all think he's doing that?
Yeah. Is there anything we would like to add to this? Because I think we're drawing to the close here, aren't we?
Yeah. I don't think I've successfully converted you in Eyes Wide Shut fans.
Certainly not fans, but I'd say maybe there's a wee bit more to it than I suspected at first. You know.
No, I go along.
There's some interesting things.
I go along with what I said to begin with. You know, I made a joke, but I think it was a good pick because of the discussion that we've had.
Oh yeah.
Which needed to be had, really, because we shouldn't allow these people to get away with what they're putting on screen unchallenged.
Yeah,
I agree.
You don't want to just pretend there's only the good bits that we talk about.
Yeah. I mean, some of the thing about this movie, though, I'll say, all the conspiracy theories about it are nothing more than fun. But there is absolutely an underlying tone about this movie that suggests that something darker is actually afoot. And maybe that's just a deliberate ploy, just to make the whole thing look silly. And anybody who talks about it, anybody who brings it up, you have to be a crazy Alex Jones fan, or you watch too much Joe Rogan podcasts. But this is a very real thing, in my opinion, that's going on. And I think this movie is a deliberate attempt to cover that up.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect message to leave this on. So I'll say goodbye from me.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
And please subscribe, leave a like, and we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.